They built on my land like it was already theirs. And for a while, I almost let them. I didn't yell, I didn't threaten. I didn't even call a lawyer at first. I just watched quietly, like someone waiting to see how far a person is willing to go when they think no one's going to stop them. And the thing is, they went a lot further than I expected. So this all started on a Monday morning. Nothing dramatic, just one of those slow, quiet mornings where you're half awake, holding a trash bag, thinking about coffee more than anything else. I stepped out into my backyard, and that's when I saw it. A brand new fence, 6 feet tall, fresh wood, perfectly straight, the kind of job that doesn't happen casually. You know, the posts were clean, still smelled like sawdust, like it had just gone up over the weekend. At first, I didn't think much of it. The property line behind my house had always been kind of vague. There was this row of old trees, a couple uneven shrubs, and beyond that, just open yard belonging to the house behind mine. No fence, no markers, nothing official looking. Just one of those suburban we all kind of know where things are situations. So I figured, okay, maybe they finally decided to put something up. Good for them. I tossed the trash, stood there for a second, squinting at the alignment. Something about it felt a little off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Still, I shrugged it off and went back inside. That should have been the end of it. But later that afternoon, my lawn guy Marcus, he'd been taking care of my yard for about 3 years. Solid guy, doesn't talk much unless something's worth saying. He pauses mid-mow, looks at me, then nods toward the fence and goes, "Hey, you know your property goes past that, right?" I laughed, not like I didn't believe him, more like it just sounded wrong. I told him, nah, I think the line's around those trees, that's how it's always been. He shook his head slowly, wiped his hands on his jeans, and said, "Man, I've been cutting your grass a long time. I always thought your lot ran deeper than that." And something about the way he said it, not pushy, not dramatic, just matter of fact, it stuck with me. That night, I dug out my closing documents. You know how those things go. A stack of papers you look at once, sign your life away, and then forget about, until suddenly they matter again. I spread everything out on the kitchen table, found the plot map, and just stared at it for a while, tracing the lines with my finger, comparing it in my head to what I remembered. And that's when it hit me. My property didn't stop at the tree line. It went past it, about 10 feet past it, which meant that fence, that clean, brand new, perfectly straight fence, wasn't on their land. It was on mine. Now I didn't jump to conclusions. I've lived long enough to know that stuff like this happens. Old markers disappear. People rely on what they've been told. Sometimes things just get miscommunicated over the years. So, I didn't get angry. Not yet. The next evening, I walked over to their place, knocked on the back door. That's when I met him properly for the first time. His name was Daniel Harper. Mid-50s, always had this relaxed smile, the kind that makes you think everything's fine, even when it's not. He opened the door, friendly enough, wiped his hands like he'd been working on something. I said, "Hey, I think we might have a small issue with the fence line." He didn't flinch, just leaned against the doorframe, listened while I explained what I saw on the map, kept nodding like he'd heard this kind of thing before. Then he goes, "Oh yeah, the previous owner told me the line was somewhere around there, somewhere." That word stuck out. I smiled, kept it light, and said, "Yeah, I figured it might be something like that. Maybe we should double-check just to be safe." And he said, "Sure, no problem. Easy. Too easy." I walked back home thinking, all right, this is nothing. We'll sort it out. No big deal. But then days passed, then a week, then 2, and nothing happened. The fence stayed exactly where it was. No calls, no updates, no sign that he had any intention of checking anything. I told myself not to overthink it. People get busy. Life happens. Maybe he just hadn't gotten around to it yet. But then one morning, I heard something. That low mechanical hum. Trucks, tools, voices. I stepped outside again. Same spot as before. Same view, except this time, there was more than just a fence. They were building something. And that's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was a decision. By the time I walked closer, it was already halfway done. Not a small project either. This wasn't some little garden box or a temporary structure you could shrug off and say, it'll be gone in a week. No, this thing had weight to it, intention, permanence. They were putting up a shed, and I mean a real one. Panels stacked neatly on the side, a gravel base already spread out, workers moving like they knew exactly what they were doing, like this had been planned for a while. There was even a trench running from the main house, thin but deliberate electrical. I stood there for a second, just watching, arms crossed, trying to process how we got from, yeah, we'll double-check, to this. Daniel spotted me eventually. He waved like nothing was wrong, like we were just two neighbors sharing a normal morning. "Hey, just putting in a little storage," he called out, casual as ever. I walked a little closer, careful not to step onto what I already suspected was still my land. "Looks pretty permanent for a little storage," I said. He chuckled, shrugged. "Figured if we're doing it, might as well do it right." If we're doing it. That wording sat heavy. I didn't argue right there, not yet. I just nodded slowly, said, "We should really get that boundary check before you go any further." He gave me that same relaxed smile again, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes if you look closely. Yeah, we'll get to it." 2 days later, the shed was fully assembled. Walls up, roof sealed, door installed. There was even a small light fixture inside, wired clean, glowing faintly at dusk, like it had always belonged there. And when I stood back, really looked at it, I could see it clearly now. Part of that shed sat past the fence. On my side, that was the moment everything shifted. Up until then, I had been giving him the benefit of the doubt, telling myself this was confusion, not intention. But you don't pour a foundation, run electricity, and build a structure like that without deciding exactly where it's going. This wasn't a mistake anymore. This was someone betting that I wouldn't push back. So, I stopped waiting. The next morning, I called a surveyor. $950. Not cheap, but still cheaper than a drawn-out legal fight. And more importantly, it meant clarity. No opinions, no somewhere around there, no friendly guesses, just facts. It took about a week, and when they showed up, it was almost anticlimactic. One truck, a couple guys, quiet, methodical. They walked the property, set up their equipment, took measurements like they'd done it 1,000 times, because they probably had. A few hours later, they started placing markers. Bright stakes, small flags, clean, undeniable lines cutting through the grass like a truth that had been buried too long. I stood there watching them finish, heart beating a little slower, heavier, because part of me already knew what I was about to see. But knowing and seeing, those are two different things. The lead surveyor walked over, handed me the report. I didn't even need to read all of it. The flag said enough. The fence 8 feet, onto my property. The shed 5 feet, onto my property. 5 feet doesn't sound like much until it's yours. Until you realize someone else decided it didn't matter. I just stood there for a while, staring at those markers, the bright orange against green grass, like little warning signs that had finally shown up too late. Then I pulled out my phone, took pictures from every angle, wide shots, close-ups, the flags, the fence line, the shed base, everything, not out of anger, but out of necessity. If this went further, I wanted proof that couldn't be argued away. That night I printed the survey, clean copy, highlighted the relevant lines, wrote a short note. Nothing aggressive, nothing emotional, just facts. I walked it over, left it at his door. "Hey, Daniel, got the survey done. Looks like the fence and part of the shed cross into my property. Let's figure out an easy fix before this turns into something bigger. Simple, respectful, clear." And then I waited. A day passed, nothing. 2 days, still nothing. By the end of the week, I realized he wasn't ignoring the message because he hadn't seen it. He was ignoring it because he had. And then things got strange. One evening I stepped out back and there they were. 2 lawn chairs set up right inside that disputed strip, facing the sunset like it was a scenic overlook. A couple days later, He added a small fire pit. Nothing fancy, just a metal ring, some stones around it, but the message was loud and clear. He wasn't just using the space, he was claiming it. So I walked over again. This time there was no small talk. I pointed at the flags, the survey copy still in my hand. "Daniel, this isn't a gray area anymore. You're on my property." He didn't look surprised, didn't look worried either. He leaned back in one of those chairs, crossed his arms, and gave me that same calm expression. But there was something else underneath it now. Confidence. Not the good kind. The kind that comes from thinking you've already won. "You know how this works, right?" he said. I frowned. "No, I don't think I do." He gestured around casually like he was explaining something obvious. "People use land long enough. Take care of it. Eventually, it's basically theirs." Basically, I let out a small breath. Not a laugh, not anger, just disbelief. "Basically isn't legally," I said. For the first time, his smile faded just a little. But he didn't back down, just shrugged. "Well, we'll see." And that right there, that was the moment I realized this wasn't about confusion or miscommunication or even the land itself. This was about him testing a line, seeing if I'd defend it or let it slide. So I stopped trying to handle it neighbor to neighbor, and I started thinking bigger, because if he believed time would make it his, then I was about to show him what a deadline actually looks like. So I did something that honestly I should have done sooner. I stopped treating it like a personal disagreement and started treating it like what it actually was, a violation. Not dramatic, not emotional, just procedural. I made a call to the county zoning office. Explained the situation, kept it simple. "Hey, I had a survey done. Looks like a structure and a fence are crossing onto my property. Just wanted to know what my options are. No threats, no accusations, just facts." They didn't rush, didn't promise anything either. The woman on the phone just said, "We can send someone out to take a look." That was it. And weirdly, that was enough. Because once you bring the city into something like this, it stops being about who's more stubborn and starts being about who's right. About a week later, 2 inspectors showed up. Plain truck, no flashing lights, no drama, just clipboards, measuring tools, and that quiet professional energy that says, "We've seen this before." I met them in the backyard, walked them through everything, showed them the survey, pointed out the markers, explained the timeline. They didn't interrupt much, just nodded, took notes, then started doing their own measurements. Tape lines stretched across the grass, photos taken from multiple angles. One of them crouched near the base of the shed, checking the foundation, the other pacing out distances from the property line. At one point, one of them asked, "Do you know if there were permits pulled for this structure?" I said, "I believe so, but I doubt it was approved for that location." He gave me a look, not surprised, just familiar, like he'd heard that sentence 100 times before. They wrapped up in about an hour. No conclusions, no big statements, just a simple, "We'll file our report." And then they left. Now here's the thing about waiting after something like that. It's a different kind of waiting. It's not passive. It's heavy, because you know something's coming. You just don't know how hard it's going to hit. 3 days later, it hit. A notice.official, stamped very clear. The structure non-compliant, the fence improperly placed. Violations included encroachment over a property line and failure to meet setback requirements. And at the bottom, the part that mattered most, remove or relocate within 30 days. No, basically no gray area, just 30 days. That same evening, there was a knock on my door. I already knew who it was before I opened it. Daniel stood there, but he looked different this time. Same face, same clothes, but the confidence was gone. In its place was something softer. Not quite panic, but definitely pressure. "Hey," he said, quieter than usual. "Can we talk?" I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. He rubbed the back of his neck, glanced toward the yard like it might disappear if he looked long enough. "Look, I think the city's overreacting," he started. "You know how this stuff is. Permits, rules, it's confusing." I didn't say anything, Just let him talk. He shifted his weight, then finally got to it. What if we just keep things the way they are? I mean, it's not hurting anything. You could just sign something. Give permission. There it was. Not ownership, not accountability, just permission. I looked at him for a second, really looked this time, and asked the only question that mattered. Are you planning to buy that portion of the land? He blinked, like he hadn't expected that. Well, no. I mean, not really. Not really. I nodded slowly. Then, no, I said. Simple as that. No anger, no speech, just no. For a moment, it felt like he wanted to argue, like he was searching for something to say that would shift things back in his favor. But there wasn't anything left, because this wasn't about opinions anymore. It was about a deadline. Day 29 came. Nothing changed. The shed stood exactly where it was. The chairs still there. The fire pit untouched. Like maybe somehow the notice would just go away. Day 30 passed. Still nothing. Day 31, the fines started daily, and those add up faster than people expect. You could almost feel the pressure building, even without seeing him, like the situation was tightening around him one day at a time. Then came day 45. I remember that morning clearly, quiet, overcast, the kind of sky that makes everything feel a little heavier. Around 9 a.m., a truck pulled up. Not his, a contractor. Two guys stepped out, started unloading tools. A trailer hitched behind them. No yelling, no confrontation, just work. I stepped outside, stood at the edge of my yard watching. Daniel came out a few minutes later. He didn't say anything to me, didn't even look my way. He just stood there, arms at his sides, watching the same thing I was. And then it began. They started with the shed, panel by panel, unscrewing, lifting, separating. The structure that had gone up in 2 days came apart piece by piece, like it had never really belonged there to begin with. The light inside flickered once, then went out. They cut through the base, broke it apart, loaded everything onto the trailer. Efficient, practiced, almost surgical. Then they moved to the fence. Posts pulled, boards stacked, holes filled, grass pressed back into place like someone trying to erase a memory. By early afternoon, it was gone. No shed, no fence, no chairs, no fire pit, just open space. Quiet, empty, mine. I stood there for a long time after they left. Not celebrating, not smiling, just taking it in. Because the thing is, it was never really about the land. It was about the line. The one people think they can cross if they do it slowly enough, casually enough, confidently enough. And for a moment, I almost let him. That's the part that stuck with me. Not what he did, but how close I came to doing nothing about it. Now here's where it gets interesting. A couple weeks later, I saw him out back again. No fence this time, no shed, just him standing near the edge of where everything used to be. He looked over at me, and for a second, I thought he might say something. Apologize maybe, or start something new, but he didn't. Just nodded once and went back inside, and we've barely spoken since. So now I'm curious.